I woke up in the emergency room, IV dripping into my arm, monitors beeping like whispers of betrayal. My head spun, not from the fall, but from the silence of my phone. No missed calls. One message. "Can you Uber?" My husband, a surgeon who vowed to love me in sickness. That's all he said. I stared at the blue hospital curtain and knew this wasn't just abandonment. It was a signal, and I would answer it. Not with tears, not with begging. I replied with silence, then a lawyer, then a plan. And when the time came, I wouldn't knock on his door. I'd erase his name. The violinist played their part as if every note was in celebration of my perfection. I stepped through the arched doorway of our glass-wrapped estate in upstate New York, the warm lighting diffused through walls that seemed built from sunlight. This was our 7th wedding anniversary. 7 years since David kissed my hand in front of everyone and promised me forever. Every guest tonight toasted to the couple who made it, and I played my role flawlessly. Smile controlled, laughter genuine enough, dress tailored in ivory silk. I was the wife people imagined when they heard the word legacy. David held my hand a little too tightly when he led me to the center of the room for the speech. His grip was always firmer in public, as if holding me harder made us more believable. He said all the right things, how I'd stood by him through every sleepless night building his hedge fund, how our love outlasted market crashes and family drama. Everyone clapped. Cameras flashed. But only I saw Natalie, his younger sister, staring at me from across the room. There was something in her eyes tonight, a cold amusement, the kind you give someone who hasn't figured out the joke yet. I had found the document that morning, buried under a half-read novel in the sunroom, a financial packet David had printed for review. I knew better than to snoop. He'd made it clear early in our marriage that curiosity is a poor trait in a partnership. But one signature caught my eye. It wasn't mine. It was meant to be. I saw the marital trust section. My name was spelled wrong, the loops of the M slightly off. The signature had been forged, not sloppily, but by someone who thought I wouldn't notice. I hadn't said anything. I wanted to believe it was an assistant's mistake, a filing error. But when I looked up at Natalie that evening, she looked back at me like someone who'd already grieved my place in the story. As the guests migrated toward the fire pit and cocktails, I wandered to the west hallway of the house, one that had always been off limits. Storage, David had said, that wing's under renovation. For 7 years, but tonight something felt different. The door, always locked, had been left slightly ajar. The room smelled like wood polish and secrets. There were old portraits, documents. I didn't touch anything. I only stood there for a moment, staring at the one thing hanging in the center of the wall, a wedding photo of David and me, printed on canvas with a caption underneath in gold foil. David Montgomery and Madison Cole, Building the Empire 2016. But something was wrong. The date, the font. It was a different version than the one we'd chosen, a replica, but not ours. I closed the door quietly, pretended I never saw it. 2 days later, David was dead. They said he fell down the back staircase, broke his neck instantly. No one else was home. The cameras that lined the halls had been turned off. Routine maintenance, the estate manager said. At the wake, everyone said the usual things. Such a tragedy. Too young. What will Madison do now? Natalie didn't cry. She wore a cream dress, no black, and smiled too often. She walked up to me once and whispered, "You didn't even know what you married into, did you?" I didn't respond. I didn't need to. At the reading of the will, the lawyer's voice was dry, impersonal. Natalie lounged back in the leather chair, arms folded, smirking. "This estate," the lawyer said, "along with all trust accounts, stocks, and investment portfolios, have been placed under a living trust, with Madison Cole Montgomery listed as the sole beneficiary." The air snapped. Natalie laughed, a sharp, cracked sound. "That's impossible. I'm listed as a co-owner. I've seen the papers." The lawyer adjusted his glasses. Your name was removed 3 years ago, Ms. Montgomery. All revisions were signed in front of a notary and recorded legally. No, I was part of it, David said. He promised. She turned to me. What did you do? I looked at her steady. Nothing you wouldn't have done, Natalie. I just paid better attention. She lunged at the table, knocking over the crystal water glass, hands shaking. This isn't real. This isn't how it ends. But I already knew. This was just the beginning. The clip was 38 seconds long, just enough to destroy me. It showed a woman who looked like me, sounded like me, moaning in soft gasps as she leaned into a shadowed figure. Her eyes half closed, her hands clutching sheets. I hadn't seen it until my agent called in panic. Our 7-figure campaign with a pharmaceutical brand was on hold. You need to clean this up, Claire, fast. At first I thought it was revenge porn, but the lighting was too even, the movements too controlled. The way the camera tracked her face, it was clinical, designed. I'd worked in media too long not to see the signatures of artificial storytelling. I called Dev Singh. He owed me. Years ago, I'd helped him cover up a PR crisis involving a data breach and 3 dead influencers. Now he ran a tight anonymous team in the startup underground, ethical hackers who liked puzzles more than money. He found the source in 46 hours. Claire, he said over encrypted voice. This wasn't released publicly. The video's stored on a private server under a project name called EmoTrack. That's not the scary part. I waited. The founder account is Daniel. I stared at the wall. My husband? He's not listed as Daniel Morgan. He used a shell identity, DM Horowitz. But all the linked IPs trace back to your house. Claire, this project uses your face, voice, and biometric cues to train emotional response algorithms for ads. I felt cold, not angry, not even betrayed, just coded. It made sense in a sick way. Daniel always said, "You have a face that moves markets." Apparently, he meant it literally. EmoTrack was an underground AI startup funded by a cluster of anonymous investors, an ad tech Frankenstein built from biometric piracy. They'd created hundreds of clips using manipulated identities to test emotional responses for targeted ad injection. Mine was the centerpiece, the prototype. Dev asked if I wanted to leak it. Not yet, I said. I let the world believe I was spiraling. I canceled a few appearances, went silent on socials, let tabloids guess if I was depressed or drunk or both. Daniel never contacted me, not even once, which confirmed what I already suspected. He wasn't afraid because he thought I didn't know. Let him. Behind the scenes, I started buying. Through 3 separate LLCs registered in Switzerland, Singapore, and Montana, I began acquiring minority stakes in a startup Daniel didn't know I knew about, because he thought he'd hidden it. He forgot who taught him media warfare. To the world, I was just a woman betrayed, a strategic widow in progress, grieving and glamorous, hurt and human. I booked an interview with Modern Grace magazine talking about heartbreak, resilience, and my new mission to fight for women exploited by deepfake tech. The interview went viral. Overnight, I became the symbol of what every woman feared, being digitized, sexualized, and silenced. Then I called Eden Walsh. Eden had once called me a fraud in Louboutin after I won an award she believed belonged to her. We hadn't spoken in 4 years. Now she was the CEO of a watchdog organization that hunted unethical AI behavior. Her entire platform was built on exposing the kind of thing Daniel had created. We met for lunch. I didn't apologize. I didn't flatter her. I showed her the video. She didn't say anything for a long time. Then she slid the tablet back and said, "How far are you willing to go?" "All the way," I said. She smiled. "Good. Because they're already watching you." With Eden's support, we launched a campaign called Need No Permission. It featured real women who'd been deep-faked, stolen, misrepresented. We turned victims into voices. Within 2 weeks, my face, once a prototype, became a protest. The irony? Every headline drove up the valuation of EmoTrack. Investors couldn't get enough, and as it rose, so did the shares quietly owned by my shell companies. On the night of the TED Talk, I wore black, not for mourning, for precision. The theme was digital dignity. My name had been trending for weeks, caught between scandal and revolution. I stepped onto the red circle, adjusted the lapel mic, and began with the line that broke the room. I used to think consent was a contract, but now I know it's a battlefield. The lights were blinding. The applause was louder than expected. I smiled. Not for them, for the game, but in the back row, just beneath the light rig, someone held up a phone, filming me. Live. A live stream popped up on an encrypted forum within minutes. Caption: Phase 2 begins. The lawsuit arrived on a Monday, which felt poetic in its cruelty. Daniel's legal team didn't call, didn't warn. They just dropped a 63-page claim into my inbox and let it rot there like a dead bird in the sun. Claire Morgan, it began, in all caps, is not and has never been a co-founder or creative contributor to Emotrack Technologies. They claimed I was merely a visual asset used in prototype testing and no different than a stock model whose consent expired upon contract termination. I wasn't surprised, but I was insulted. Daniel had always been a collector of books, of rare wine, of people who made him look shinier by reflection. He'd once said I had a face that inspired trust. Now that face was being downgraded to a prop. I called Dev again. He didn't sound surprised either. I've been watching their legal prep for weeks. You ready for the counterpunch? Always. He sent over a folder titled Truth. Inside were clips, video fragments, audio samples, metadata trails. But one file stood out. The file name, private DM voice auth log 05.m4a. It was scratchy, like it had been recorded through a coat pocket, but the voice was Daniel's. I'll just have her sign the papers. She won't ask questions. If she does, I'll say it's standard procedure. Trust, right? That's what marriage is. A paper shield. I listened to it 3 times, not because I needed confirmation, but because I wanted to burn every last ember of doubt. I sent it back to Dev. Can you verify it's clean? Already did, he said. AI pattern match confirms 99.4% vocal identity. No splices, legally admissible. And if it were to, say, surface accidentally? It's amazing how clumsy people get with USB drives. He smiled through the voice call. I didn't. 2 days later, I received an invitation to a closed-door arbitration session between Emotrack's key stakeholders. It wasn't court, but it was where reputations went to die. The board wanted to assess my legal challenge and Daniel's countersuit. They expected me to back down. I wore white. Daniel arrived with his mother, Marianne, a retired circuit judge, and his sister, Vanessa, a cybersecurity engineer, a lovely little fortress of privilege. Marianne didn't shake my hand. This is a waste of everyone's time, she said. I smiled. Then let's not waste it. The room had no windows, just one long mahogany table, a pitcher of untouched water, and 3 cameras, one in each corner. They let Daniel speak first. She was never part of the founding team, he said. Claire was used for early UI testing. Face capture, tonal variants, nothing intellectual, nothing proprietary. Her likeness was licensed, not shared. He paused for dramatic effect. She's manipulating public opinion through a victim narrative, and it's damaging the brand. I let him finish. Then I pulled out a folder and handed it to the board's legal chair. Inside was the transcription of the audio Dev recovered, along with the biometric match report. I have proof, I said, that Daniel not only lied about my involvement, but willfully falsified the original IP ownership filings. This isn't just a marriage issue. It's a federal tech fraud case waiting to happen. Vanessa shifted in her seat. I looked straight at Marianne. Your son stole my identity. Digitally and legally. He turned me into a synthetic version of myself, then tried to sue the real me for not playing along. Silence. I'm not here as his wife, I said. I'm here as the registered owner of Emotrack's flagship avatar, the DM series. Daniel froze. What are you talking about? He asked. I reached into my bag and pulled out a single laminated sheet, the registration confirmation of intellectual property from the U.S. Copyright Office. Last month, I filed for legal authorship and digital rights of the likeness used to construct Emotrack's training model, including voice, face, and emotional signature. The data architecture was built around my expressions, my cadence, my body language. Your engineers said it themselves. The model is Claire-like. I placed the document on the table, and because the avatar was derived primarily from me and built using illegally sourced media, the derivative work is now legally mine. Your company's AI, your flagship product, is my property. Daniel's face drained of color. Vanessa mumbled, That can't be. It is, I said. You should have hired better lawyers. Daniel stood, his jaw clenched, hands shaking. You think this is over? You think I'll let you walk away with everything? I didn't answer. The chairperson did. We will adjourn for internal review, but Daniel didn't sit. He lunged at the center of the table, knocking over the water pitcher, slamming his fists into the document. The cameras caught everything. This is bullshit, he screamed. She doesn't know how any of it works. She's not the genius. I am. I watched him unravel, thread by thread. Security arrived. He fought them, flailing. Marianne tried to intervene but was pulled back. Vanessa didn't move. I picked up the laminated registration and walked out without a word. The next morning, every major outlet ran the same headline. Tech CEO loses rights to his own AI after secret wife power play. By noon, Emotrack's stock dropped 37%. By sundown, Daniel's medical license was under review. I didn't celebrate, not yet, because now everyone was watching. The evidence folder had 143 documents, contracts, email chains, metadata records, internal Slack conversations, enough to bury 3 companies and 5 executives. I didn't leak them to the press. I sent them directly to the SEC. No warning, no PR campaign, just a folder named Truth with a digital signature traced back to an anonymous account hosted on an Icelandic server. 3 days later, Emotrack's headquarters were raided. The footage hit Twitter before noon, men in black windbreakers wheeling out hard drives and monitors, employees in suits shielding their faces. Daniel wasn't there. He was already in hiding. The financial violations were grotesque: misappropriated investor funds, shell companies, IP laundering. But the biggest blow was the data. Emotrack had used unlicensed biometric footage to build every aspect of its core engine. They hadn't just stolen from me, they'd stolen from hundreds of women, public-facing influencers, teachers, nurses. Most never knew their faces had been turned into avatars optimized for ad conversion. By week's end, Daniel's assets were frozen. The house in Montauk? Seized. The penthouse in Tribeca? Gone. His Tesla was towed from his mother's driveway in front of reporters. I didn't touch any of it. I didn't show up in court. I didn't speak to the media. I didn't even update my social feeds. I sat in my kitchen, drank green tea, and watched the collapse like a sunrise. Then I sent one email. Subject, RE, Karma Body. You made me call Uber. I made you homeless. Fair? I didn't get a reply, but I wasn't done. 1 week later, I incorporated a new company, Mirrored, a boutique firm dedicated to erasing unauthorized AI likenesses and rebuilding the digital reputations of women exploited by emerging tech. The tagline was simple: you own your face. Within a month, I had contracts with 2 advocacy groups, a Hollywood agency, and a cybersecurity firm specializing in digital forensics. I staffed up fast: ethicists, engineers, litigators. Some had been victims themselves. Others just wanted to burn down the future before it swallowed the present. I wasn't trying to be noble. I was trying to take back the narrative. Then, on a Monday morning, an unmarked package arrived at my office. No note, no return label, Just a laptop, old, pre-2015, scratched on the lid. I didn't open it for hours. Something about the weight of it, the memory of it, felt too deliberate. When I finally powered it on, it booted to a single file on the desktop. Watch Mead MP4. I clicked play. It was Daniel, not the man I remembered, sharp-jawed and smug. He looked thinner, grayer, eyes sunken. He sat in a dark room wearing a wrinkled hoodie. His voice cracked more than once. "I'm sorry," he said, "not for losing, for never giving you the truth." He looked away from the camera, then back. "My mother made me sign the papers, the ones that stripped your name off the filings. She said it was for legacy, that no one would invest in a tech company co-run by a woman who used to manage PR for makeup brands. She didn't even say your name. She just called you the liability." He rubbed his face. "I let it happen. I let her build the lie. I thought I'd fix it later, but later became never. And you got smart, smarter than me. That's what scares her the most, that you don't need us anymore." He leaned in close to the lens. "You don't need anyone." The video ended. I sat back, stared at the screen, then laughed. Quiet at first, then louder. They thought I had been made by them, that I had emerged from Daniel's orbit like a byproduct. They didn't know. They didn't know that at 28 I'd designed the first deepfake campaign used in a classified government trial, a synthetic hostage video used to buy back 3 American engineers from a hostile border. They didn't know I was the ghost in the machine long before Daniel stole my face. And now I had my own empire. The first print run sold out in 4 days. How to erase a man without lifting a finger wasn't a manifesto. It wasn't even a revenge tale. It was a clinical dissection of power, how it's built, how it's broken, and how it rarely looks like what we think it does. I didn't name Daniel once. I didn't need to. The internet filled in the blanks for me. I woke up to 100,000 mentions on launch day. TikToks of women reading the chapter titles aloud like spells, threads breaking down my silence as weapon philosophy, parodies, think pieces, praise and fear, sometimes in the same sentence. Then came the offers. A radical feminist collective called Venus Thorns wanted me as their keynote speaker. "You are proof," they wrote, "that the new war is fought with optics, not weapons, that no woman needs to beg, plead, or scream to conquer." I declined, not out of humility, but clarity. I replied, "Evil is not gendered, and power isn't always victory." That answer didn't go viral, but what came next did. An audio clip began circulating on obscure forums, then spread to Telegram channels, Reddit threads, YouTube compilations. It was me, or what sounded like me, telling a former assistant that I'd pressured a suicidal intern to keep quiet about a data leak, followed by a dry chuckle and the words, "She was weak anyway. The industry's better off." I'd never said those words, but the voice modulation was perfect, the breath cadence, the pause between syllables. It wasn't an amateur job, it was a masterpiece. At first, no one believed it. Then someone found a video, a mashup of older footage, interviews, panels, behind-the-scenes, B-roll, stitched into a seamless sequence. The mouth moved just enough. The tone was just flat enough to be emotionally vacant, cold, calculated, viral gold. I was being deep-faked again, but this time as the villain. The backlash came fast. People who'd idolized me now dissected my silences. Critics I'd ignored in the past suddenly became prophets. Former allies gave measured concern. My inbox filled with death threats and media requests in equal measure. I traced the source. Dev helped again. It wasn't public. The metadata had been wiped 3 times, but the upload trail left a residue. There were logins from an internal server, my own company, my own domain. One account had full access to internal folders, draft communications, unencrypted archives. The username was LW Lucy Walker, 25. Smart, soft-spoken. She'd joined us after losing her previous job to a harassment scandal that no one believed. I'd hired her against my legal counsel's advice, gave her control over PR scheduling, taught her how to handle media firestorms, how to weaponize silence, how to erase narratives with one well-placed redirect. She'd learned everything, and now she was using it against me. I called her into the basement conference room. No windows, just 2 chairs and a water bottle. She walked in like she was late to lunch, not treason. "You know why you're here?" I asked. She shrugged. "Performance review?" I slid the tablet across the table. The clip played in silence. When it ended, she didn't flinch. "You taught me this," she said. Her voice was steady, younger than I remembered. "You told me once that reputation is a mirror, and whoever cracks it first controls the reflection." She leaned forward. "Why do you get to be the only one who rewrites her story?" "Because I lived it," I said. "You borrowed it." "No," she whispered. "I improved it." I studied her then, not just her face, but her posture, the rehearsed confidence, the weaponized calm. "How long have you been planning this?" I asked. "Since the second time you ignored my proposal, the one about narrative preceding. You took my idea and fed it to someone else." I hadn't even remembered the proposal, but now I did, vaguely. It hadn't been ready, but to her, that didn't matter. "So you made me the monster," she smiled. "I made you the prototype, just like Daniel did." I stood up, walked to the door, then turned back. "If you think you can destroy me with the tools I invented—" I stepped closer, voice low. "You've clearly never met level 3. Her face paled just slightly. She didn't know what that meant, but she would. The boardroom was silent when I played the clip. Lucy's voice echoed through the speakers, detached, confident, casually lethal. She talked about controlling sentiment, preempting backlash, planting narrative cues across private channels. She referred to me not as a person, but as a legacy object, a reputation asset ready for restructuring. The silence cracked when the head of investor relations stood up and walked out. By the end of the hour, 3 more board members had resigned. That evening, I wrote a single-line post on the company's official site. "Mirrored will cease all operations effective immediately. We no longer believe power should be sold under the guise of protection." The response was nuclear. Some called it cowardice. Others called it brilliance. But no one called it boring. The platform's accounts were deleted, archives encrypted, client data transferred to third-party custodians for ethical migration. Our algorithms, once praised as defense weapons, were dismantled line by line. The empire I'd built twice was gone, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years: free. 2 weeks later, I launched the Human Mirror Initiative, a nonprofit, no investors, no shares, just a small staff, 2 rooms in a Brooklyn walk-up, and a mission: teach women how to control their digital identities, secure their financial footprint, and reclaim narrative autonomy in a post-AI world. We didn't promise protection. We promised knowledge. Workshops filled fast. Survivors of deepfake scandals. Teachers whose faces had ended up in spam ads. Nurses whose LinkedIn profiles were mimicked in identity theft rings. Influencers, executives, students, anyone who'd been turned into data and left out of the decision. We taught them how to trace, how to fight, how to speak, and most of all, how to disappear, strategically. Legacy media tried to frame it as my redemption arc. I ignored them. I wasn't trying to be forgiven. I was trying to evolve. It took less than 6 months before I was invited to Geneva to speak at the Global Ethics and AI Summit. I declined. Instead, I accepted a smaller invitation from a journalism class at a community college in Cleveland. No cameras, no press, just 20 students and a chalkboard. They asked better questions than most anchors. One girl raised her hand, eyes bright. "If you could go back," she asked, "to that day at the hospital when you called your husband and he said what he said, would you do it again?" I didn't hesitate. "Yes," I said, "but I'd call him from a blocked number." just to see if he'd still tell the stranger on the line to get an Uber. They laughed, not cruelly, just with recognition. Afterward, I stayed behind to erase the board. A boy lingered in the doorway. "Do you miss it?" he asked. "The power?" I looked at him, really looked. "No," I said. "I miss being underestimated. That was when I was most dangerous." He nodded slowly, then left. Months passed. Seasons turned. The world didn't change overnight, but it started asking better questions. One day, a production company reached out. They wanted to option my life story, fictionalized, of course, for prestige streaming. I declined, but I agreed to one final interview, live. No edits, no filters, just me and a microphone. The set was minimal, just 2 chairs and a camera. The interviewer leaned in, trying to be soft-spoken but hungry. "Claire," she said, "you've become the face of something bigger than yourself. But if you could go back to the beginning, would you still answer the phone?" I smiled. "I'd answer," I said, "but not to ask for help. I'd call to confirm what I already suspected, that sometimes the real betrayal isn't silence, it's indifference dressed as routine." She blinked. "And what do you call what you did next?" I leaned in. "Necessary." The camera zoomed in. "What's next for you?" she asked. I didn't answer right away. Then I turned to the lens, locked eyes with the future, and smiled, not sweetly, sharply. Phase 3 begins. Cut.